Hey, this is Tom Nash, and as requested, I'm going to do a full comparison between Ford, Tesla, and GM as a bonus, the financials. Hold on a second, we're going to get to it, but first I want to show you what's going on. So right now, we're still missing in a critical part. As you can see right here, we don't have the quarterlies for Ford. The only thing we have is just the press release right here, Q1, Q2. Yes, but we cannot get to the filings. The 10Q, the quarterlies are not out yet, probably going to be out later today. Once we have them out, I'm going to actually analyze them. There's more detail there that I actually need, but we already have enough as it stands to go ahead with the initial analysis based on the press release as it stands. So let's go back to the press release. So as far as the press release itself, I mean, look, it's probably as far as the bottom line summary, because you guys like me to summarize, it's not as bad as GM. There's a lot of good things about Ford. I'm not going to be sitting here and bashing Ford. I'm also not going to be basically sitting here and pretending that Ford is, the best thing since sliced bread, because it's actually neither. So I'm going to be very fair and honest. The bottom line is this is way better than GM, what we saw yesterday, but still not as good as Tesla. And I'm going to show you side by side each category why. But I'm also going to show you the good stuff, because I think there's a lot of good stuff with the way Ford is actually performing, at least in this quarter. It's not bad at all. So first of all, the first thing I want to show you, before I show you the Excel spreadsheet, I have in a whole Excel spreadsheet basically comparing company to company. But before we go through that, I want to show you actually the numbers themselves from Ford. Again, this is from the press release. So first of all, the first thing I want you to notice is this. Net income for Ford for the first half of the previous year was $3.8 billion. This time we're at negative 2.5. Now, it's a major drop, but there might be reasons for this, which we only find out once we see the 10Q quarterlies. So I'm not going to stay too long on this. However, where I do see a problem, and this has nothing to do with the quarterlies, is with these two things that I'm going to show you right now. So this is the net cash. This is just cash items only. So nothing accounting-wise that I'm going to be missing. So cash-wise, Ford went down from $5.2 billion of net cash provided by operations in the first half of the previous year to $1.8 billion in the first half of this year. So that's a massive 64% drop in net cash from operations for Ford. First half this year, first half last year. That's not good. Now, what I do find peculiar and kind of funny, to be honest, if you look at this, these are the numbers from financing. So this is what they did from financing. So they did 6.178 from financing. That's just in the first half of 2021 versus 4.142 for the first half of 2022, as you can see right here. So if you're honest about it, beyond the fact that it's less, that's not the point. Look at the numbers. Let's compare how much Ford made from selling vehicles from operations, which is $1.8 billion, to how much Ford made from financing, $4.1 billion. So in fact, and the argument could be made here, and this is a little bit of a nerd joke, is that Ford, not Tesla, Ford is not a car company, because they literally made double from financing than from car sales as far as operating activities go versus financing activities. In fact, with these numbers, they might be even better than Nancy Pelosi. Who knows at this point? It's just an anecdotal thing. I think where the problem is for Ford is here. Look, this is the main problem. Ford is doing way better than GM. Ford numbers are up. They're selling more cars for sure, and they're definitely way better than GM. And they do have dominance in the most important category in the U.S. auto industry, which is pickup trucks. So pickup trucks is the best category in the U.S. Ford dominates it still with the F-150. That's why they have great numbers, and they'll continue to do it until somebody challenges them. Haven't happened yet. I don't know, maybe the Cybertruck, who knows? But God knows when it's going to come out. It's definitely not going to be Rivian. The Rivian pickup truck isn't a competitor to the F-150 if you think about it. If you like pickup trucks, you understand why. If not, doesn't matter. Where Ford actually has a problem is in issuance of long-term debt right here. So if you basically focus on the screen and you look at the issuance of long-term debt, you'll find something really strange. Ford essentially borrowed almost $11.7 billion in the first half of last year. Ford borrowed another almost $19 billion in the first half of this year. This company keeps borrowing money, obscene amounts of it, and the result is the one line below it. Look, payments for long-term debt. Can you see that? 26.6 billion in the first half of last year, 25 billion almost in the first half of this year. So this is a company that's so much in debt. They're paying 25 billion every 6 months as payments for long-term debt. That's not sustainable for any company long term. I mean, you cannot survive in this business when you're paying 25 billion. This is worse than the US government for debt payments. It's just insane. Okay, let's go forward a little bit here because there are a lot of good things also for Ford. Now we're getting to the parts where I gotta give them credit. I mean, gotta give them praise. I did some preliminary checking here. So this is the automotive revenues for the first half of 2021. They had 57 billion for the first half of 22, 70 billion. It's a 21.4% increase. Well done. Not easy in this economy. Good job, Ford. Just comparing the second quarter to the second quarter of 2021, this is even more outstanding. Look, 57% increase. Insane. Brilliant numbers. Really, really good. In fact, they're way better than GM's because look at it here. The cost structure, this is the COGS, the cost of sales, 19.2% versus 21.4 and 45 versus 57. So basically, the growth of their automotive revenues is much higher than the growth of their costs, opposite of GM and very similar to Tesla. So in that respect, they deserve a lot of credit. Also, I want to give them a shout out because their SG&A, selling general administrative, didn't go up at all. They're completely stagnant. I mean, they're not spending any excess money, unlike GM. We saw that insanity. So SG&A stays flat, which is always a good sign of good management. And what I do want to show you here is another good thing. Look, operating income, Ford went up from 2.442 billion in the first half of previous year to 4.211 billion in the first half of this year. That's a 72% increase in operating income. Amazing. Really, really good. This is, I think, the next part is a little bit misleading, and that's why I'm missing the 10 Qs, the quarterlies, to figure out where this crazy number is coming from. If you look down below and you see income loss from before income taxes, basically this number shows you negative 3 billion. And all of a sudden, like in the previous half of last year, they had 4.6 billion and they're doing better. So it doesn't make any sense. The company is doing better, but all of a sudden they just have 7 billion less of income. And then you look up and you say there's 6.6 billion and it says other loss. What other loss? I don't know. It might be the Rivian thing, or at least partially the Rivian thing. But if so, it's accounting. It's basically, it's just Rivian going down in value. I don't know, but that's 160% drop in income. I mean, I think it's accounting base. I wouldn't take this too seriously, at least until I see the thank you. So I'm not going to knock Ford for this. Let's scroll down a little bit more, and I want to show you two more things before we go to the Excel spreadsheet. Right here, this is the balance sheet, and here where things get a little bit murkier for Ford, not as good as before. They're down 5% in their cash reserves, not amazing. However, and this is another kudos to Ford, their inventory increased only 15%. If you remember from yesterday, we saw GM rise in 30%, GM 40%, Tesla 30%, don't remember. Like, Ford only increased 15%. That shows me they don't have a lot of idle vehicles, unfinished vehicles, which they can't deliver. Not as bad as GM and Tesla. So in that category of unsold inventory, it seems that, Ford is doing way better than GM and Tesla. You got to give them credit. I mean, can't lie. Now, assets to liabilities, right here, assets have dropped 4.4%. The ratio assets to liabilities for Ford is 1.21, very similar to GM and much worse than Tesla, as I'll show you in a second in the Excel spreadsheet. What I do want to focus on here is very interesting. Again, the 6.6 other loss keeps popping up. I don't know where this is from, my guy. This is weird. But look at the operating margin. The operating margin for the first half of 22 was 5.5%. The operating margin for the second quarter was 7%. Okay, so this is getting interesting. So it seems to me, based on this preliminary kind of review, that if you just look at the second quarter versus the first half, is that Ford is actually improving their margins, which is not bad at all. Now, I don't know if I have any more notes here. Oh yeah, of course, the same thing as GM, Ford Credit. It's very similar to GM Finance. It's basically their business. And yes, it's not real debt. However, you have to understand there's a lot of risk with this sort of business model. The first thing that if we are going to recession, There's going to be a lot of car payments defaults, and this 42 billion is going to be very, very risky. So, and similar to GM, we talked about this, and then a lot of mumbo jumbo. Let's go to the Excel spreadsheet right now. So I've took the liberty to add a little bit of goofy pictures. You have Mr. Mary You Led, with the GM logo right here. I bunched them together, Ford and the Techno King, Elon Musk. Okay, so first of all, a few corrections. In my previous video, I mixed up Tesla global vehicle sales with GM US sales, a whole mix up. So this time I went to carsalesbase.com and I took it directly from there. So this is Q1 vehicles sold in the US only by each company. So that way we are comparing apples to apples and the numbers are solid. Okay, cool. So in that category, GM sold the most, as you can see right here, 509,000 vehicles. Ford sold 429 vehicles. Tesla is way behind with 110,000 vehicles. That's just US Q1. However, this is pretty much where the Tesla getting beat by GM and Ford will end, as you'll see in a second. So I've added Ford to the mix before we look at Tesla and GM. Maybe we'll keep this Excel spreadsheet and just add more vehicle manufacturers to it just to create more and more. Let me know below in the comments if you want me to keep adding more and more in my next video, just to create a very interesting spreadsheet with all the auto manufacturers. So basically, look, and by the way, in the previous video, I had a little mistake here. So the 17 and then 25 flipped. So 17 was on top, 25 was on the bottom. But this is the way it looks. So the final result was still 50.72 increase, which is correct. But just the presentation was a little bit off. Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. So automotive revenues for the first 6 months of 2022, $70 billion, an increase of 21.39 for Ford for the first half compared to the first half of previous year. Way better than GM with a 9.4%. Not as good as Tesla with their 65%. Okay. So this theme will continue as we go forward. Ford better than GM, not as good as Tesla. Cost for the first 6 months of 2022 for Ford was 62 billion, up from 52 billion, an increase of 19.2%. More expensive. I mean, the high rate of increase, I guess, compared to GM. But if you look at this 11.5% of GM versus 9.4% increase in sales, their increase in cost is faster than increase in sales. However, in Ford, look, increase in sales is up 21.4%. And as long as it's growing faster than the cost increase, which is 19.2%, I'm good with that. Again, not as good as Tesla with a gap of 14% between cost growth and revenue growth. Operating income for the first 6 months of 2022, 4.2 billion, slightly lower than GM, just slightly. However, much better quarter over quarter. The first half over first half. So from first half of 2021 to first half of 2022, an increase of 72.4%. Wow, impressive. Definitely compared to the negative 30% of GM. But again, not as good as Tesla with their 220% increase. So you're starting to see the trend here. Again, we have net income here. I don't think we can use this because it includes this weird 6.6 billion loss. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's Riven. I don't know. So this I would just skip for now. This minus 165. Let's just highlight it and let's just leave it until we actually see the 10 Qs. Okay. Cash we can't look at. So cash, they're down 5%. Not as bad as GM, losing 16.7% of the cash. Definitely not as good as Tesla, which actually increased its cash reserve by 4.2%. Again, they have the same thing as Ford and GM. GM Finance has almost 94 billion. They have 67 billion. That's just in the car loan business, the payments, whatnot. Now, as far as debt, similar debt to GM. I mean, that's net of Ford credit, 17.8 compared to GM. Very, very similar. The ratios, as you can see right here, cash to debt ratios is pretty much identical. 1 for both. That's literally all the cash they have is pretty much debt. We know that, right? If you look at Tesla again, 6.3, they have 6 times more cash than debt. A whole different story. Assets to liability is very, very similar. 1.2 ratio versus GM's 1.3. Very, very similar. Not as good as GM. Definitely not as good as Tesla with 2.2 ratio, which is much higher. It's actually valued very similarly to GM. I don't know why, because I think it's a way better company across the board. So they are valued at 3 billion higher, which I guess is okay. But if I had to rank these for sure, this would be 3, 2, and then obviously 1. This would be the ranking I would give it. I think the difference between GM and Ford, based on these financials, definitely justifies, I think, for Ford a better premium than just $3 billion, because their numbers are much better than Ford's. But again, they're not as good as Tesla. But again, the question remains here, and as I asked this before, is the fact that basically Tesla is beating out these guys in this matter is worth 16x more. Is Tesla 16 times better than Ford? Because we just saw Ford give better results than GM. Okay, so if we saw GM, we saw Ford. Ford did better. So the question is this good enough to say that Tesla is not 16 times better? Comment below, let me know. And let me know if you want me, to do the review of the 10 Qs when they come out, which is the quarterlies, and if you want me to add more auto manufacturers to this series and just add the Toyota, like other cars, etc., let me know below.